Hey everybody, welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast, the #1 resource for learning what it means to have a healed heart, connect more deeply with Jesus, and experience true and lasting transformation in your life. I'm one of your hosts, Kathy Little.
And I'm your other host, Melinda Wilson. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss the fresh content we're continuing to release. And while you're at it, we greatly appreciate your help in getting the word out by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a quick review. You can also keep up with us by following our social media by searching face-to-faceministries.org on Facebook. That's no spaces, no numbers, and no caps. And on Instagram at face-to-face-min, and that's all one word.
We want to invite you to join us in our free face-to-face heart healing network and in our premium network. Be part of a growing community of people just like you who are wanting to dive deeper into what it means to access the full benefits package of the cross and learning how to help others do the same.
Our team also offers one-on-one ministry sessions that can be done virtually, and you can also learn how to help others connect with Jesus and find healing in their lives through training we offer in the ministry model we use. And for more information about all of the resources, trainings, and events that we offer, visit face-to-faceministries.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter.
All right, so let's dive into today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome back.
Or welcome for the first time.
Episode 114, y'all. And we're excited because we actually have a guest from a previous couple of podcast episodes returning. You know, we have said so many times we'd love to continue the conversation. We never have enough time with our guests. And so we were able to get this one back. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one.
I don't think they're going to enjoy it. I think they're going to love it. In fact, we finished and we were like, wow, we both felt like that was one of the most interesting, fascinating, profound, timely conversations that we've had in a long time.
Very relevant, very much a now word right now. And just a little backstory. Some of you guys like to hear what goes on into putting this podcast together. And I will tell you that when we finished recording this, I had 3 different tracks that I needed to blend in together because all 3 of us were on separate inputs, separate mics, separate recording. And I had 49 minutes of myself. I had 49 minutes of Melinda, and I had 13 minutes of our guest. And I don't know, maybe you just all felt the collective like, oh no, thinking that I had lost it. And after we felt like it was such a fantastic episode, and then, oh my gosh, it's gone. And there was no way we could recreate it. But thankfully, the folks over at Squadcast, this is not a paid endorsement, but the folks at Squadcast who were very quick on the tech support helped me retrieve the episode. And I'm so thankful because this one, it's just one for the books. It was so good.
Yeah, it was. And it certainly was an honor to have Michel Hendricks back. If those of you who haven't listened to the first one, it's not a part 2. This is a
completely new conversation.
I mean, we refer, of course, we talk about the book, The Other Half of Church, because that should be in every Christian's hands, especially every Christian leader, pastor, church elders, their hands. Just take a listen. Let us know that what this podcast, what the conversations, how they're affecting you, how they make you think or feel. We'd love to hear some of your feedback.
As always, you can go to Apple Podcast and leave a review, and 5 stars. We'd always appreciate that. But we're not going to delay 1 second longer. We want to get into this conversation with Michel Hendricks. Welcome, Michel. So good to see you again.
Oh, thank you. I love being here, Kathy and Melinda, seeing your faces again.
Hey, it's been a minute since we had you on the podcast, but I'm so excited to have you back. We often want to have like more time with people. And so thank you for giving us a little more time with you today. We've already interviewed you about the book that you wrote, The Other Half of Church. You co-wrote that with Jim Wilder, Dr. Jim Wilder, neurotheologian, and we've interviewed him as well and may actually have him back in the next few months, hopefully. But yeah, just wanted to catch up with you and see how things are going. How, like, I know that Revelation doesn't quit when you put the period at the end of the book. And so would love to just talk with you more about what it looks like for the church to be whole-brained, and maybe even just recap some of the problem that we have in the church without using that part of our brain. And I know so many people are kind of tired of the traditional church model and tired of kind of that half-brained discipleship and all. So let's just kind of refresh everybody a little bit. And Melinda, I haven't even invited you to talk yet, but I'll give you a chance to, I was kind of jumping in, very excited with this conversation, but that's kind of where we want to go today. And Melinda, what do you want to add to that?
It's usually not an issue with me not jumping in because, I'm never short of words, but I wouldn't really say much different except that, we keep promoting your book. It's not like something that's stagnant, that once it's out, then, we can't wait for him to come out with another one because that one's old material or it's not at all relevant. And we certainly talked about it. In fact, we just did a 2-day, full day training in a manual approach in Montana. And we had at least 4, if not more, pastors of churches, like head pastors of churches. And I said, y'all, have you read this book? And there was like 2 people. And I'm like, every single church in America needs to read this book. And that still is true. And I said, it is written by a pastor. It's not just like I feel good and want, I think because they were men. And so that was a whole other thing, Michael, it was right. So fascinating. It was incredibly helpful to hear the perspective of men asking about, and of course, the manual approach is all about using both sides of the brain, that interactive connection. You can't do it without using the right side of the brain and that experience and relational connection and memories. So it really gave me insight into more of how men think, because our training is typically women heavy. Because, it's like, oh, well, women are the only people into inner healing. It's ooey gooey emotional. And it really has nothing to do with that. And so I was able to say, no, this book is written by a man who is years-long pastor of a church. And, that really does give more validation. It really is. It's like, you're not just some, emotional health guru that wants everyone to feel good. This is years of experience. So I, again, just want to honor you. And not everyone has listened to the podcast we did with you before. It's been a while. And, but it's a book that in, 10, 20, 30 years time, I see as still being an invaluable handbook resource for churches moving forward. And I just want to echo what Kathy said. We'd love to hear any more revelation you've had, and is there another book you're working on? Mm-hmm. And maybe that's the same question. I don't know. Maybe it's part 2.
Yeah. Wow. Like, where do I start?
Yeah, we kind of fire hosed you there, Michael. Sorry.
Well, feel free to direct me as I talk.
Yeah.
The book was really written out of frustration. And I think that's one of the pluses of it. I'm not coming here like I'm this expert dude and follow my 7-step process and your church will create wonderful disciples. But it was more me trying, and it just didn't kind of work. Sometimes it didn't work. Other times it was missing big parts and I didn't know what they were. And so that's the fun thing about it, is I get to take people with me in my own frustration. I've been working a lot with pastors in the last year, and there's so much frustration in the lives of pastors over the last couple of years. There's, our brain is actually to help to handle problems. Our brain has this kind of memory storage unit that you all use with your Emmanuel stuff, but also it's always trying to understand life using our past and trying to line things up. And sometimes we do, and we kind of know how to do it. Other times we get, a file not found. You ever get that, like 404 file not found? You're searching for a file on your PC, you could swear it's there.
Yes, all the time.
File not found, and a lot of pastors' brains are coming up file not found. They were never taught, never shown. Seminary didn't tell them, their families didn't teach them, and the issues pastors face now, they haven't really been prepared mean, you think masks versus no masks, vax versus no vax, the racial issues coming up. How do we handle that in a church? A parishioner says, my daughter wants to transition to a man. What do you want me to do? Pastor's just going, file not found, file not found, file not found. And they're just, and when you get those, your stress level goes up. And you get that over and over again. I mean, can't you just ask me some questions about the book of John? That's really what I was trained to do. And so the pastoral job, I'm coming across a lot of pastors too that are just kind of ready to throw the towel in. It's like, maybe I'm not good at this, or maybe I'm just not the right person, or this is just too hard. I'd rather go make some money. I'll go into some other thing where you make money. And so, we are in a time, I think, of a transition in church, the way we do it and the way we even think about it. We sometimes even call it a second Reformation. It's a relation, instead of a doctrinal Reformation, it's a relational Reformation, where churches become again places of centered on deep love, family level love bonding as like the starting point. Not something we talk about and try to do but it's the place we start, and it's the thing we always keep at the center. We never diminish that part. And we do a bunch of other stuff as well, but it's the center.
I would imagine that with I have the greatest respect for pastors trying to navigate all of the crazy from the past 2 years. I'm so glad I'm not a pastor of a church, a local church expression. And I've got friends who are pastors, and my heart goes out to them, because this has been one of the most crazy obstacles. I mean, it's like you pastors, you can't win. There's people on all sides of everything. And it's like, there's a no-win situation. Like, you've got people that are really adamant against XYZ and others that are really adamant for it. And you can't please everybody. And I know that churches are really experiencing right now this whole thing where we were all in the habit of going to church every Sunday and ticking the box and doing our thing. And then we all get shut down and we aren't allowed to go. And then now we are, and people aren't coming back.
Yep.
And so you have to ask what's going on. Were people so accustomed to just doing the church's duty, and then now they've seen it's not as fulfilling, or they're, I don't know, some are probably afraid to go back, but some may just not go back because it wasn't meeting needs in their life that they were hoping it would. But what's your perspective on that? I mean, the church is suffering. I mean, I've got a friend, if I lived close enough to his church, I'd be at it, because they go after the relational stuff. They have a breakfast before Sunday church, and they really spending time getting to connect relationally. I would love to be at his church, but it's 3 hours away from me. But even they're struggling to get people back, and they're doing some of that stuff that we're talking about. What do you think?
Well, we hear a couple different issues. Some of them are because of these the weird dividing issues, the XYZ, like you said, issues. No matter what side you take, 40% of your church is going to leave. So there's 40 that say, I will not come if they stay. There's some in the middle that are, okay, we can disagree and I'm fine and everything, but there's another chunk that says we're out. Another part of it is too, there's a lot of people my wife just heard it the other day in a Zoom meeting with a woman, I think from Mexico. And she says, I'm just tired of going to church, coming back home, and it seems like nothing really changes in my life. And so that's actually a good thing to say, because it says that she's hungry for more, right? But a lot of churches might be threatened by those kinds of statements, right? I would, if I were a pastor, I would, and I didn't know what to do. I mean, it is kind of scary. And also, if we've de-relationalized the church enough so that its main purpose is to get us good doctrinal content and an emotional worship experience, then, why not stay home in the comfort of my living room and, stay in my sweatpants and sweatshirt and a cup of coffee in my hand.
Yeah.
And it's probably a bunch of other stuff too, but it really is, we're kind of crossing a line about, I even wonder if God is kind of bringing us into a new way the church is a new format that's going to be different than anything we've seen now. And I've talked to some other pastors, even a Catholic priest who says he believes we're coming on something, a big change in the way we see Christianity working itself out.
Yeah, I would think that it has to change. And I thought it would, like, I was thinking it's going to change back when everything first hit, like
Yep.
2 years ago. I was thinking this is like the ramifications of this are going to be far reaching. Like, and we have not yet begun to see the impact of this. And I don't know if the change is a bad thing. I was thinking this is going to force people into small groups and relational connection. But yet it also has divided everybody more than we've ever been divided, because now everybody's a problem or a resource, or everybody's afraid of everybody. And you've got people so strongly on both sides. Like you said, 40% on either are going to be adamant no matter what you do. So it feels like a really hard position for pastors. But I wonder what it'll look like. Have you got any insight or perspective or thoughts or ideas on, like, what do we do now? It's like pastors are like, what do we do now?
Well, I had an interesting lunch about a half a year ago with a Catholic priest who's kind of over all the dioceses in our area, who had read he meets regularly with Jim Wilder too, kind of mentoring relationship. And he read The Other Half of Church and asked Jim if the three of us could have lunch together. And this is, down maybe 45 minutes from my house or something. So Jim and I went over there and had lunch with him. We sat down in the restaurant and he had a copy of The Other Half of Church on the table. And he's going like this to the copy. And he says, "Michael, thank you for this book." And he said, "This book is the way forward for the Catholic Church." And then Jim said, tell Michael what you just told me in our most recent mentoring session. And he said, we've seen like a 400 or 500 year cycle in the church where we're this radical remnant that's just barely hanging on. And then it gets cultural adaptation, starts really growing, infecting the culture. It kind of levels us, gets comfortable, loses the center, and then it collapses. And then out of that collapse comes another one. You see, if you look over church history, that happens over and over again. And he said, we had one of those back with the Protestant Reformation. And this is a Catholic priest telling me this.
Yeah.
And he says, even looking back, I thank the Protestants for bringing the Bible back into church and into people's hands, and to Jesus back into the center of things. That was good. He said, but we've had this huge 500-year cultural adaptation where largely our moral system was based in a good part of the world on the Christian view of life, etc. And now we're at that 500-year period. And then he looked across the table at me and he said, if we define Christendom as the cultural adaptation of the Christian worldview that generally people accept, he says, in a good part of the world, but let's just talk about the United States. In the United States, Christendom is in rubble. He just sat there, and he says, when that happens, he doesn't believe the rubble's ever going to be put together. But when the rubble happens, what we do is we go walking through the rubble looking for the new thing God is doing.
Wow.
And so what he told me is really stuck with me. And so I see my job and others around me. I encourage everyone to start getting very curious. And almost be like that little dog, when you take out walk and they just want to sniff everything, right? They want to go everywhere. And we should be kind of like that, just looking what is God doing? Where, in this crazy world we're in, and it's truly crazy right now. What new thing is God doing, and which way is he going to take his church? That's been my attitude. I have no answers yet. I just have curiosity and looking for the new thing.
That's a lot more hopeful. And I think that we as humans can be more pessimistic or wanting to expect the worst, so that if the worst happens, then we feel like we're prepared for it. But I would much rather have a hopeful outlook on where the church is going, and remembering that Jesus knows, and none of this surprised him, and he's got a purpose and plan, and his kingdom is still advancing, even though it looks horrible. I mean, we're looking around going, what, addressing some of those comments you said. Why are you coming to me with this problem? Oh my gosh, file not found.
Right.
Ask me about a word study on something. And yet, and that's actually a beautiful thing about, and I don't mean to bring it back to a manual approach, but to say that training up lay people, which is what this book is doing, what we're doing, so that it's not all on the pastor. and connecting them to Jesus. And he knows the answers because what is the pastor going to say? What is the right answer? I don't even know if there is a right answer anyway to those complex, super complex issues that maybe weren't even around 5 years ago. And yet Jesus is not like, this is not a new issue. It's the same issue, just coming out in 2022. This is not really anything new at all. I had a kind of a question, just back to the book, because I was thumbing through it again, and I've got all these tabs and underlines and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, we didn't even talk about barely one chapter of the book, but I was kind of like, okay. And I opened up to this thing that I had underlined and exclamation point and hearted and everything. But maybe two things to address, sort of in the light of what does a pastor say, but the chapter on healthy correction.
Yep.
And the one thing I opened up to that I had underlined and circled and stuff was talking about Jesus talking to Martha. Mm-hmm. And I feel like what I've heard when it was Martha and Mary, and we hear, oh, Martha, Martha, why are you worried about these things? Just stop it. Be like Mary. And people have this. In fact, I was just talking to someone yesterday, like, I'm such a Martha. I want to be more like Mary. Yep. And I've heard that countless times. And there's a condemnation and a shame for feeling like Martha. And Mary is even, Jesus did say Mary chose the better part. But I love what you write here, saying, notice that Jesus starts by saying her name twice, Martha, Martha. Like the correction we studied above, and you referred to this, Jesus is affirming his loving attachment to her. It's not an exacerbated, oh, Martha, Martha, what am I going to do with you? And I wonder if that's, when you were writing that, do you feel like that was the general perspective that we have on Jesus? We're expecting him to shame us. Is that a paradigm that you see in the majority of Christians, and that's why they're interpreting it that way?
Well, as you know, one of the key nutrients of healthy soil is hesed, which is our loving bond to each other. And churches we're supposed to be like a family level bond with each other, and also with God, the Father, God, the Son, with the Holy Spirit. And oftentimes, instead of having a loving bond to Jesus, we have almost what we would call a fear bond. Mm-hmm. Now, everyone needs motivation to live in the way that agrees with God's kingdom, right? The question is, how are we motivated? Right? A fear bond would be, man, I'm not gonna do this thing because what might God do to me, and he might punish me, and he might not like me, and I might not go to heaven, or blah, blah, blah. That's kind of fear bonding, classic fear bonding thinking. Love bonding is, I'm not going to do this because I love Jesus, and this is not who we are. That's not the way we act as a people, right? Those two are in very different places in our brain. Anything that's fear motivation is way back in the back of your brain. It's more the kind of the primitive area of the brain, we might call it, the fear-based. And when we're operating out of that part of our brain, we're rigid. We don't have a lot of creativity. We tend to go non-relational. We become problem solvers. We just want to get rid of the issue. But when we're thinking, this is who I am, and I love the people who are living this way, and some of the people I most love live this way and have modeled it to me. And our brain is actually doing the same thing. This is conscious, but it's doing the same thing much faster before our thoughts. It's these kinds of loving, bonding relationships. When we talk to each other about these kinds of stories and how we motivate ourselves, are we being motivated by fear? Or are we being motivated by our loving, joyful desires, right? Desires are actually a very, very important motivation factor. And they've also gotten kind of the bad rap in Christianity. Don't ever trust your heart. Your heart desires are no good.
Right.
But God also says, trust in me and I'll give you the desires of my heart. Delight yourself in me. And so, desires can be good or bad, but when we're rightly related to each other and to God, and our bonding is strong, our desires will guide us in a good way. And I do that. I've been working with churches since the book came out. We've had a lot of people reach out to us for churches, and we do consulting with them and meet with them and start training some of these full brain practices. But I often see evidence of fear bonding in a church team, for example, a church staff team.
Between each other or between, okay.
Both, but I tend to see it. I see both, but I see it a lot between each other.
Wow.
I see them actually having a pretty good bond with God, but they have fear bonding with each other.
What does that look like? And what do you feel, what can cause that?
So what it comes out as a lot of times are things like, is there a lot of threats or blaming? Do we concentrate on the negative possible outcome? Or are we focusing on who are we in this situation? Do people get treated the same way, whether they're productive or whether they're struggling? How do we handle it when someone isn't doing what we think they should be doing? Do people have to put on kind of false self-images and pretend that there's something that they're not really? Or can they, the big one too is, do they openly share weakness? In a fear-bonded community, you're going to protect yourself because it's not safe to share your weakness.
Right.
In a deeply loving bonded community, I'm like, okay, Melinda and Kathy, here's the stupid thing I just said to my wife. I need your help. That was not the way. That's not who I am. Could you two tell me who I am? Now, I would only tell that to the two of you if we had a pretty secure, loving bond. If there was fear there, it's like, no way.
Yeah.
Because they'll use it as a weapon.
Yeah. That's so true. Wow.
Well, sorry, Kathy, do you want to ask a question?
No, I'm jotting, I'm like taking notes like crazy on this one over here. I'm like, yeah. See, this is why I was so excited to talk to you again, because you've got some insight into some really practical stuff right now. Even, just talking about fear bonds and understanding what that is and understanding what that looks like, because people don't even know how to identify this stuff. It's just the way they operate. And acknowledging that's an issue. That is an issue. Pardon the interruption, but we do want to make sure that you ladies especially know that Dash Away Weekend is coming up in April, the first weekend of April. You can find out information at dashawayweekends.com. This one is in North Carolina, Moravian Falls. Very excited about it. We still have space for you. You do not want to miss it. It is a retreat like nothing you've ever experienced.
And it's a very sacred space, a very sacred place, historically, spiritually. So come and join us for a truly life-changing weekend. And we have a couple other really exciting things coming up. In fact, next weekend, March 4th and 5th, 2022, in Austin, Texas, for a 2-day Emmanuel Approach training. Please come. Anyone who wants to grow closer in your relationship with the Lord, with others, learning relational skills, how to stay in relational joy and experience Jesus in a way that will truly transform your life. Come and join us in Austin, Texas, March 4th and 5th. Information can be found
face-to-faceministries.org/training-events. And there's one more little event tucked in there that I think everybody needs to be part of, because there's no excuse. We're going to do one in Simpsonville, South Carolina, our new hometown. It's going to be live streamed. And this is a one-day event called Encountering Emmanuel, and it is for everyone. It is not for people who are planning to learn the tools in order to help others. This is for you to have an opportunity to experience them for yourself. It'll be well worth your time, and we would love to have you in person if you can make it to Simpsonville. The exact location is going to yet to be determined based on how many people sign up for in person, but we are live streaming, and we'd love to have you be part of that. So again, pardon the interruption. We're going to get right back to Michael.
How do we then, we as the just collective we, you're right, Kathy, it's like you have to even recognize that that's an issue. And so many people are going through life with these like neural pathways. It's how I've always thought. It's how I've always reacted.
Yep.
And I don't even know that I'm not operating like my true self or living from the heart Jesus gave me.
Well said.
So when people do recognize, because maybe they've asked you to come in or someone's pointed that out, first of all, what's the reaction been? And then secondly, to even recognizing, oh, this is not my best self. And then secondly, how do we kind of course correct and change those fear bonds between people to love bonds?
Yep. Well, the number one thing we train is how to recognize when you and your community are being motivated by fear. And so we have some of the questions like I just shared with you, and there's others. And then usually when I work with the church, we'll meet regularly and they'll have time between. So it's like every 2 weeks or twice a month or something. And so maybe I'll explain to them the signs of a fear-bonded community. And then I say, okay, your homework for the next 2 weeks, jot down every time you see one of these characteristics of a fear bonding, and you are in between you and someone else, or between two people in your community, and see how much fear bonding you detect. Now that I've given you like a meter, I've kind of taken the tape off the meter you weren't ever reading before. Now you can read it all of a sudden. You're like, oh my word, my oil is way low. Yeah. And you're seeing something. And then we come back and we'll talk about it then for an hour. We'll talk about it for 2 or 3 sessions sometimes. It's like, that's all we're doing for the next 2 months. They just want to talk about stories and stories and stories. Once you do that, it's good to pick a specific fear bond or fear situation and ask yourself, what do I actually fear in this situation? A lot of times people have a fear reaction, but they have a hard time explaining what it is they actually fear. And a lot of times, most of the times, if you keep drilling down, it comes back to your heart characteristic. Usually they'll do a surface level fear, but if what do you fear about that happening? And then something, what do you fear about that? And then they'll get down to something like, I am afraid that they don't like who I am. Like they reject me as a person. Boom, you're at the bottom of the fear. Okay. And then you ask yourself, what's important to me that I value behind this fear? So if fear is motivating me right now, and I understand the fear now, what's that actually? And I'm assuming this thing I want to do is a good thing. A lot of times we do good things, but we're motivated bad ways, right? What do I have behind this fear that's actually I really do value and is a good thing and is a part of a healthy identity, and that is like us as Jesus's people, right? And then kind of sit in that for a while, and then come up with some things. What can I do to switch my motivation system from this fear system to this? This actually, the reason I want to do this thing instead of fear is because of this. This is really who I am. I've always valued this. I think God has gifted this to me. I've also seen this work and some closely bonded people, some people I love really well. There's a lot of really healthy motivation systems. And so you can do some work to actually convert. So have everyone take one fear motivation they have, find the true value below it, and try to do the switch and say, okay, for the next 2 weeks, practice, keep your antenna up for fear bonding here. And when you do, go back to your value, living from the heart Jesus gave you, is essentially what we're flipping it to, that motivation system.
Wow. Are you finding that the pastors that you're working with are catching on? Like, are they able to get it? Because I mean, I don't know who you're working with. And so we're not like even talking about anybody specifically, but I would think that the way we've always done it is the way we've always known how to do it. And so this is a neural pathway that has been very deeply ingrained. Like you said, they don't train you in seminary to navigate these things. So you're basically inviting them into a whole new paradigm of how to view their team, their staff, their church, and you're basically flipping the light on in a room that's been pitch black. They have, people are completely unaware of this. I know I was not aware of it before I started dabbling with all of the life model stuff and your book and the people we've interviewed and all that. It's like, yes, this makes sense to me. But it still seems like it might be a little difficult to make that shift, because I'm already identifying some things like, oh, this is a fear thing for me. And I kind of know what the bottom line fear is for me, but making that switch and like, what are some of the things that can help that switch happen and stick?
Yeah. Great question.
This is really important.
Very important. It's for a good reason that the Apostle John said that perfect love casts out all fear. And that love is the central purpose of the church. It's the central focus of our discipleship. Love is the one thing that if we don't get that wrong, everything else becomes meaningless in our church. You might as well close the doors. Jesus even says that. He says, I'm going to take your lampstand away, to the church in Ephesus. If you don't get this love thing going, the other stuff I don't even care about. And it's not that he doesn't care about it. It's just without love, nothing. You've lost the foundation for the church. And Paul in 1 Corinthians 13 says the same thing. Without love, it's like you're a clinging. I mean, I put my fingers on my ears because it hurts my ears, right? And so a lot of times, if we just tell people we'll be more loving, that's too big of a thing. It's too general.
Yeah.
And one of the good first steps then is to work on the fear bonding, because that's actually something specific. Okay, you go through this, pick a fear bond. Now let's try converting it. Let's all talk about it in 2 weeks. Oh, I could do it. It was awesome. Another person goes, oh, I couldn't go anywhere. I just kept getting angry. I kept going into enemy mode as a result. Oh man. And we work through it, do a lot of Emmanuel, because a lot of times healing will be needed. As you both know, you start going in your fear bonds and all of a sudden you're an 8-year-old when your dad said this or that to you, right?
Yeah. Come on. Yeah.
And we need to be prepared for that. That's why Emmanuel is absolutely essential, because as you do this work, trauma will percolate, right? We don't go trauma hunting, but when you do this kind of work, it will percolate and we need to be ready for it.
Right.
But one thing I'll say is I don't jump into the fear bonding work right at the beginning. We build joy, we practice quiet, we learn about our relational circuits and how we keep ourselves relational, and we practice lots of Emmanuel first, right? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, we can get some stuff coming up with the fear bonding and all of a sudden I haven't taught them the stuff that helps them deal with it. So first things first, I get some foundational stuff first, let them practice and do some stuff. And then we go into some fear bonding. And if we do, then they have the tools even to handle it themselves then. They can quiet themselves, make sure the relational brain's on, and then they can go mutual mind with Jesus and say, hey, this seems pretty big. I'm not sure where this energy is coming from, and let Jesus take him back to where it is and talk to men what he sees and his love and feel his attunement. And that's just a whole different game. That's what you two are experts at. And I'm so glad when you told me you were in a meeting in Montana with pastors, I'm like, oh Lord, give them more, please, more. This is so important what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really critical to have the tools to know how to handle that. I'm glad that you start out with that and that learning the basics. Because, our level 1 is the basics, that rhythm of joy and quiet, how to quiet from big upset, relational circuits, attunement with Jesus, allowing him to attune with you. All of that is part of our level 1 training. And we will go back for a level 2. That's the plan, is to go back up there to do a little bit more in depth with people that are actually going to do this in a more formal setting. But the level 1, man, it's for everybody. We all need this stuff. And it's hard. Let me just be honest. It's really like, I haven't quite figured out I haven't found like the magic verbiage to help communicate to people how absolutely critical this is. Like, I haven't figured that. We have not figured out how the best way is to actually help somebody see this is worth whatever it takes to get this stuff, to get these tools, to understand how our brain works and the relational love, the love bonds, fear bonds, and all of that stuff. I just don't know how to help people actually really get it. And I was very encouraged that even though some of the pastors, this was all brand new to them and they weren't really quite sure how they would incorporate it into like their pastoral counseling setting or into some of the things that they do normally, but yet they still all saw the benefit of what they learned. Everybody was very positive, very, very positive. But, Carl Lehman, the founder of the Emmanuel Approach, he has said to us, he said, I don't know why you guys aren't packing out trainings every week. Everybody needs this stuff. And yet we struggle to fill trainings. It's like, I don't understand. But people don't know what they don't know. And so how do you communicate the absolute priceless value, the transformational impact? This is foundational stuff that we've missed all along. And there's an awakening to all of these truths that you're talking about. The brain science has been so helpful to all of us to understand that there is a better way. There's like a more effective way to do church and life together as the body of Christ. And this whole issue of connecting with Jesus. I mean, I think people have I think the fear bond with Jesus is much more prevalent than
than we know, because people are afraid of him, because we haven't seen the goodness, because we've
Right.
had the penalty side or the punishment side. And so all of this is like, I'm like, can we not like get billboards all over the country? Can we not, like, I feel like I want to pay people to come. It's like, I'll give you $100 if you'll come and learn this, because some people just don't understand. Like, how do you deal with that? How do you help somebody see the universality of these tools and this type of a lifestyle of using both hemispheres of your brain in relational love bonds with each other?
I actually don't spend any time trying to convince people how important this is.
Well, we can.
I figure that's God's job.
Yeah.
If you look at Jesus too, he had the same problem. Some people heard his words and they're like, holy cow, I've never heard anyone say such profound things in my life. And they follow him for the rest of their life and end up giving up their life. Other people see him do things and it's like, eh. And other people see him do it and they hate him and want to kill him.
That's true.
And it seemed like Jesus was just faithful to time after time, bring the truth of God to people, show them how to live, show them God's perspective on life in this broken planet, and just do it. And he was just faithful. And I think for us too, you know, I'm in a place where all the people that contact me for consulting have read The Other Half of Church and or renovated. And there's probably 10 to 1 other people that have read it and just said, okay, whatever. But the ones that email us and say, can you help our church? They're the ones that are already interested. Otherwise they wouldn't do that.
True.
And so I have kind of a natural built-in filter because of that reason. But I don't have a whole lot of words to convince people of the importance of it. For me, it's so obvious that if they don't get it, I don't know what to say. You know, it's hard to know what to say.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. And there are some people that are completely all in with, you know, the whole Emmanuel approach and understanding that. Some people, you're right. I guess you just have to let the Holy Spirit draw people, and he's the one that's building things and healing people and encouraging people and bringing revelation to people. But it is a little, it's sad to me when people don't get it, but we just have to keep doing what we do. And I feel like there's an acceleration though, Michael. Do you feel like that's happening? There's an acceleration of revelation to the truth and power of this stuff?
There is definitely an accelerating hunger. There's a simultaneous dissatisfaction with, you know, the previous experience of a Christianity that does not focus on love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our whole brains were really designed with love as the foundational design concept. Our brain was designed with love in mind. Like when God was putting the wiring together and soldering it and whatever he did when he first made us, the thing in his mind was love and a bunch of other stuff, but love was central. I mean, if you've probably studied the five level control processor, that whole thing is a love machine, right? Mm-hmm. And when it kind of melts down and half of it turns off, we all of a sudden aren't loving very well.
Yeah. And
it's the thing we hunger for. It is the strongest force in the human brain. It's the motivation factor that doesn't ever give out. That's one good analogy of the fear motivation thing. Is fear is a lot like when you're starting a fire and you have newspaper and you have a bunch of newspaper and you light the newspaper and it's like, it's really hot. And then 30 seconds later, it's all gone. Right.
Yeah.
And this love motivation and desire that's bonded with that love is very much like a big dry oak log that maybe takes a while to get going, but once it's going, it just goes on and on and on. And there's an incredible amount of way more motivation than in the fear. But what we've done is we keep just throwing newspaper into the fire, just fire after fire and just flame after flame and throw that. And that was never designed. You know, fear itself was meant to be a 90-second or less motivation system. So, you know, rattlesnake in the road, jump out of the way. That's what it was designed for. You know, car coming to you, you know, you're about to, you know, it was meant to be a shot of adrenaline to get things. And then you very quickly calm yourself and you can't live. As a matter of fact, if you live in the fear motivation part of your brain, you're actually poisoning yourself with your own hormones.
Tell us, can you expound on that a little bit? And expound on what that looks like to live out of the fear, because just really quick at the beginning of all this stuff 2 years ago and starting to see people, afraid of each other. I thought, and I didn't want to prophesy this or say like, I don't, speak it into being, but I just thought people, their neural pathways are going to change and they are going to be living out of their fear center. And that's just going to become normal. Like, I'm afraid of you. You need to be afraid of me. And we've seen this happen.
Yep.
And so collectively, what can be done about this? Because this is huge. This is on a global scale of people living out of that fear part of their brain. So obviously we can say tritely, Jesus is the answer. We're not trite here, but how do we see this happening, getting fixed, healed on a global scale?
Well, Jesus says for any big problem in our own lives, like fear motivation is a problem, right? Jesus called that a log in our eye.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking out and seeing all these people motivated by fear, but Jesus says, where do we start? We always start with us, right?
Mm.
And so start doing our own work, start identifying the fear bonds in our lives, the things that bring us into fear motivation, and find the value under it, and bathe it in prayer, do Emmanuel around it as well. I mean, always get Jesus' eyes on everything, convert those fear bonds to the longer lasting and more healthy love bonds. You'll feel better in your body. Adrenaline it's not good to have lots of adrenaline. Cortisol actually makes your memory, it actually erases your memory. So your memory stops working well. I just read about a well-known pastor. I won't share the name, but his church, he has to preach 6 sermons a weekend. And he has some adrenaline dysfunction disease that he can't. So obviously he can't do that anymore. And I start thinking, maybe I'm just spitballing here, but maybe the human body wasn't made to preach 6 sermons in a weekend, especially with the adrenaline that maybe he was using to do that. You're frying your circuits over time.
Yeah.
And we don't see that in Jesus. We do not see that life in Jesus. We do see him when he's pushed to the edge. There's times when so many people want healing that he can't get away, and he does it. But what does he immediately do after that? He grabs his disciples, goes across the lake, and they try to have a picnic. Although that gets interrupted as well. But Jesus is very good at working and then resting and working and resting. And we don't see fear motivation in him. I don't see that at all. But again, like Jesus said, we always look at the speck in the log in our eye first. The dirty part of the cup is in the inside, not the outside. So we don't worry so much about our outside behavior. We look at what's going on in our hearts, things like motivation, like this. This is very much like washing the grimy inside part of the cup. And when we do that, Jesus says the outside is going to be clean too, because it just kind of follows what's on the inside. So don't try to, instead, the fear-based system, we try to polish the outside of the cup to make it look better.
Yeah.
But the inside still has all the grime in it. But that's what needs the scrubbing. So the stuff we do and the stuff you do is very much centering on the inside of the grimy cup and cleaning that out. And then you almost don't have to worry about the behavior. Just takes care of itself, honestly.
Yeah, that's really true. That's good. That's good, because isn't it out of the heart that everything else will flow?
The mouth speaks.
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Wow. Well, man, Michael,
time does fly, doesn't it?
How did that just happen?
Listen, I feel like this conversation has just been so practical and relevant to today. And I'm really, really thankful for this. And I think there's probably more that we can talk about, even, again, take another episode. I wish we had time today. We've got another meeting that we're running into. I wish we could just keep talking, keep the tape rolling, and break it up into 2 like we did last time. I do want everybody to know who's listening that if you have loved Michael and you're like, what are they talking about, this other half of church book? Please visit episode 82 and 83 of our podcast. That was our 2-part interview with Michael about a year ago, episodes 82 and 83. With Michel Hendricks talking about his book, The Other Half of Church, which has been out a little while now. And we've been referencing it through the conversation today and kind of taking it a step further. And Michael, thank you for writing the book.
You're welcome.
we recommend it all the time. We recommend, and then people will comment on it and, oh, you're reading that? Yeah, I heard about it on your podcast. Like, yes, should have been an affiliate on that. I don't know, but so glad that you wrote it, and so thankful for the work that you and Jim are doing and for the consulting that you're doing. I would imagine, are you doing that a lot? Or are you pretty booked up with that? Or is that something you're officially doing? Like, I'm thinking you might get some more traction on that if pastors are listening to this.
Yeah, I can give you, maybe I'll email you a link after we're done, and you can, I don't know if you have like a signature area below, you can put a link if they're interested in consulting, and it's starting to take off. I'm not the only one that's doing it. We're starting to form a team.
Good. Come on.
And, I would love for you two to be in that team someday too, as part of that if you want.
I was thinking that. I would love that. I was thinking
let's hope it grows so much that I got to pull more and more people in.
Yeah.
I don't want to dominate this space. So.
And that's what it is. It's like the snowball effect. It's like it's catching, it's gaining ground. I feel even in the past year and a half or so, I feel like what we're talking about right now, there is the breath of God on it. And it is now issue. It's a now answer. It's a now thing. It's, this is what God's breathing on to help us really find it out of our curiosity, find the new, but out of a place of a love bond with each other and with Jesus, and not this fear thing. It's so insightful, Michael, and so practical. And so many people, like I said, we don't know what we don't know. And so I'm thankful that we're able to get some more information out about, even the brain science piece of this, and the piece about how fear is poison to our bodies. And you think about how many people are experiencing a lot of negative physical things right now. And maybe it's not exclusively because of a choice they made or didn't make. Maybe some of it is the motivation behind the choice that could be adding to the physical issues. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not
living in chronic fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
And we know that we can't separate our emotions from our body, and what happens physically. I mean, both ways. If I'm not feeling well, usually I'm not super joy filled. I mean, and the other way around.
Yep.
And we talk about that in our training too, that disconnect that we have. But yeah, I know we'll just have to come back for a part 3.
Yeah, 4.
Bummer. We have to be back again. Have fun.
Yeah, that's right. And Michael, I don't know if you answered. Are you writing a new book right now, or is that secret?
It's in the works. I'm starting to put together the outline, and so hopefully we can talk about that in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Michael, can you just tell us what the link is real quick, and then I will put it in the show notes, or do you have it, or is it a complicated link? Because I'll put it in the show notes.
It's www.lifemodelwork.org/consulting, I think -services, but I'm not sure about the dash.
Okay.
But I will send it to you just in case. Because
that's
most people
awesome.
probably won't.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate your time. And I love what you carry. And I love the thought of partnering someday if this thing gets, I mean, I was thinking that. I'm like, do they have people training the Emmanuel approach? Because that's like our zone. And maybe there's something on that, and totally would love to be. I love that we have the relationship we already do with so many of the Life Model team and family. And it's certainly, I feel like all of the groundwork that Jim has laid and Carl has laid over the past 30 years, they're like seeing massive amounts of fruit now, because it's all that ground. We're standing on their shoulders and carrying this to the next level. And I am just so thankful for Life Model and what you guys are doing, and thankful that you are really hitting this head on, and it's a now issue. We need to hear this stuff, and people need to know. So thank you.
You're welcome. And this is a privilege to be with you, Melinda and Kathy. And I hope we can do it again.
Oh, we will. I'll definitely circle back. So life-giving. Appreciate your time, Michael.
Yes. Thank you so much.
So we told you, right? That was a fantastic conversation, and just totally love Michael and his heart, and very excited for what he carries and just the beautiful fruit that is coming from that book. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah. And join us in person. Like we said, love to see you.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye. Thank you for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends.
And please stay tuned for more great content coming your way.